So when does a promise stop being just a promise and turn into something legally binding? We're going to find out exactly where the law draws that invisible line.
I mean, think about it for a second. Have you ever made a promise you felt you just had to keep? You know, a deal with a friend, an agreement with your family. We do this stuff all the time. But what's the real difference between a casual, I promise, and something that could actually land you in court?
Well, that's really the heart of the matter, isn't it? Some promises are just about honor, about being a good person. But others are a matter of law. And you've got to know which is which. So, over the next few minutes, we're going to peel back the curtain and show you exactly where that invisible line is drawn. This isn't just theory. We're talking about what separates a casual chat from a binding contract. All right, first up on our journey, drawing the line with what's called the intention test. Think of this as the first big checkpoint. Before a court will even look at a deal, they need to be sure that everyone involved actually meant for it to be a serious legal thing. The fancy legal term for this is intention to create legal relations. But all it really means is this. Did the people making the promise actually intend for it to be a big deal? You know, something where a court could get involved if things go south. That's the core question. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The law basically has two default settings. When you're dealing with friends or family, what we call social and domestic agreements, the law just assumes you're not trying to create a legal contract. It's presumed to be casual. But flip that coin. In a business deal, the presumption is the complete opposite. The law assumes you absolutely do intend for it to be legally binding. It's a huge difference right from the get-go. Let's make this real with a classic case. Picture this. It's 1919. A husband, while he and his wife are on good terms, promises to send her 30 pounds a month. Sounds straightforward, right? Well, later on, she tried to get a court to enforce that promise. So, what did the court say? Absolutely not. They decided it was just a simple domestic arrangement, not a legal contract. And this case set a huge precedent. Basically, the courts decided they don't want to be in the business of policing everyday promises made between family members. But what if the context changes? What if the relationship isn't so amicable anymore? Let's jump ahead to 1970, to a very similar sounding case. Here, a couple was separated. They put an agreement in writing. The husband would pay 40 pounds a month for the mortgage. But then, he stopped paying. And here's the kicker. This time, the court said, oh yes, this is a legally binding contract. Why the change? Because they were separated. They weren't just a happy couple making a domestic arrangement. They were two people dealing at arm's length, as the law puts it. So that initial assumption we talked about, it got completely flipped on its head. It just goes to show you, context is everything. Okay, so intention is a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only one. There's another big question you have to answer to cross that invisible line. Does everyone involved have the legal capacity to make a contract in the first place? Because believe it or not everyone does. The law is really protective of minors. So the general rule is pretty simple. Contracts with minors generally are not legally binding. On the minor anyway. The adult is stuck, but the minor can often just walk away. It's a one-way street designed to protect them. So does this mean a minor can just sign up for anything and then back out scot-free every single time? Well, no, not quite. The law carves out a couple of really important exceptions where a minor can be held to their word. And these exceptions basically fall into two big buckets. First, we have contracts for what the law calls necessities. And second, we have beneficial contracts of service. Think things like apprenticeships. So what on earth are necessaries? It's not just the bare essentials like food and water. The legal definition is a bit broader. It's about things that are suitable to that person's specific situation in life and what they actually need right then and there. This could be food, a place to live, or even things like education. Let me give you a really powerful, though admittedly grim, example of this. In a case from 1844, a minor who had just been widowed ordered a coffin for her husband. The court stepped in and said, no way. A proper burial, they ruled, is a necessary, and she was on the hook for the bill. It's a stark case, but it really shows how far this idea can stretch. All right, that second exception is for beneficial contracts of service. This is stuff like an apprenticeship or a training contract. If the deal, when you look at the whole thing, is for the minor's benefit, you know, helping them learn a skill or get a start in a career, then it's binding. But, and this is a key point, this doesn't cover just any old business contract a minor might make.
And this whole capacity issue isn't just about age. Similar rules apply to someone who might be mentally incompetent or so intoxicated that they have no idea what they're agreeing to. The crucial part here is that the other person has to have known about their condition. If they knew, then the contract is usually voidable. Okay, let's tie all of this up. We've talked about these two huge hurdles, these two big tests that determine if an agreement is just talk or if it's something the law will actually enforce. It's really like having coordinates on a map. First, you need intention. Did everyone mean for this to be serious? And second, you need capacity. Was everyone legally able to make the deal? If you can say yes to both, congratulations. You've just crossed that invisible line from a simple promise to a binding contract. So there you have it. The next time you make a deal, doesn't matter if it's a handshake with a buddy or a signed document in a boardroom, just pause for a second and ask yourself, considering everything we've talked about, which side of the invisible line are you on?